Hello, everyone. My name is Ariella Wagner. I'm the founder of SunRay Construction Solutions. We help thousands of general contractors, subcontractors, and suppliers secure their lien and bond claim rights. SunRay secures approximately $10 billion annually for hardworking contractors, subcontractors, and suppliers. So today we have an incredible construction attorney, Kyle, who is going to speak on a contractor, subcontractors, and suppliers step-by-step guide to getting paid. So without further ado, I introduce the fabulous Kyle.
Thank you so much, Ariella. As she mentioned, I'm a construction law lawyer. I'm at the Frederickson & Byron firm in Minneapolis. My name is Kyle Ubel, and I'm here to speak with you today about your step-by-step guide to getting paid as a contractor, subcontractor, and material supplier. First topic I'd like to cover today with all of you is the concept that getting paid really starts with the contract. And that may seem like an obvious point to all of you, and it is, but there's some important nuance that goes into what's in the contract and the impact that that has on how you get paid and your ultimate ability to get paid. So the first thing to focus on when anyone thinks about a construction project, whether you are the owner or the general contractor, a sub, or a material supplier, is what is the basis for my getting paid for the project? And as many of you know, there's many variations on these three major subtypes, but I'd say there's three major subtypes. The first is you'll get paid a stipulated sum, or sometimes called a lump sum, for the work you do. And basically what that means is come what may, better or for worse on the contract, on the project budget, you will get paid a set amount, and that's called a stipulated sum contract or a lump sum contract. The second type is very different. It's a cost plus contract. So you will track your costs on the project for labor and or materials, and then there's a plus that's added on, that being a pre-negotiated and agreed upon profit percentage. So if you've agreed to a profit percentage plus of 6% and your project costs are $100,000, the payment would be $106,000. Easy example. And then the last one is sort of a blend of the two. It's the cost plus with the GMP feature, a guaranteed maximum price feature. So it's cost plus up to a certain amount to create an upper limit of project cost exposure for the owner, or in some cases, I guess, if you used them between a GC and a sub, an upper cost limit for the GC itself, which I guess the owner would benefit from. So those are the three payment structure types. All of you, I'm sure, are already thinking about this, but it's really important to think about the impact of our current economic conditions that they have on the form of contract, the basis for payment that you choose. Again, maybe stating the obvious, but I think it's important to talk about all these things. From my vantage point as a lawyer who negotiates and drafts and revises construction contracts for clients, I'm seeing a lot more cost plus and a lot less stipulated sum or lump sum agreements. And sort of surprisingly, those changes are coming from both sides of the equation. I think there's a lot of owners out there right now that assume that in this kind of rising inflationary environment, that folks in the construction industry are going to guard against that by coming up with a crazy high stipulated sum to guard against the possibility that they're going to get left holding the bag. And owners don't want to, in their mind, overpay in that way. And so in some ways, they're often happy to take cost plus because they know they're at least not going to be overpaying what the real price is. And on the other hand, I've talked to many people in your shoes in the construction industry who just cannot guess anymore on what prices are going to be next week, much less 6, 9, 12 months from now. And so it seems that a lot of people are settling on cost plus payment arrangements. And then finally, what provisions are included in the contract regarding accounting requirements and regarding payment requirements and requirements for payment requests. And so we'll be going to those topics next. what are some accounting basics to help you get paid? Well, unsurprisingly, it sort of starts again with the contract and what the basis for payment is under the contract and how that informs your accounting practices. Clearly, if you've got a cost plus contract or any kind of contract that has a cost plus feature, it's going to be critical, absolutely critical, that you have good accounting practices in place, either with an internal bookkeeping team or if you use an external accounting office to keep track of your project costs and the supporting documentation. But don't get fooled into thinking that you don't need to have accounting if all of your work or primarily all of your work is stipulated sum or lump sum agreements. I've heard some people say, well, I don't have accounting for my project when they come to me for legal work because it was a lump sum or a stipulated sum, and so I didn't think that the client, the owner, was ever going to need it. That's a big mistake, because if you have a payment dispute arise even out of a lump sum arrangement, it may well be that one of the arguments your lawyer will make is we can prove to the jury or the judge that you spent $1 million, as an example, on a project, and regardless of what the contract says, regardless of what the arguments of the parties are about whether folks complied with the contract, it would be unjust, or the word that lawyers use, it would be inequitable to allow the project owner, or if you're a sub, you'd argue it would be inequitable to allow the GC to have the benefit of your $1 million contribution without paying you fair value for it. Well, you can only prove that you gave somebody $1 million of value if you've accounted for it. So it's very important to have good accounting practices. The contract also will likely set forth, and in my view, if it doesn't, it should set forth, what accounting reports do you have to give to the owner and how often? Are you going to give accounting reports to the project owner on a monthly or quarterly basis if it's a cost plus arrangement? If it's a lump sum or stipulated sum, maybe it's not quite as frequently. Maybe it's at the end of the project. Maybe it's never. For a lump sum or stipulated sum project, maybe you just keep that accounting in your own mind if you need it, or in your own files rather, if you need it, if a dispute arises. But make sure you're looking at the contract to figure out what the requirements are, and then, this is critical in my view, make sure you're talking with your accountant team, whether that's an internal bookkeeper or again an external accounting team that you're using. Give your contracts, your form contracts, or any project-specific contracts you have, or changes that are being negotiated that implicate the accounting requirements, show those documents to your accounting team and make sure that what you're agreeing to do, which is a legally binding document, that it matches what your team is actually doing in terms of day-to-day accounting practices. And if it doesn't match, then I'd suggest you need to do one of two things. You either need to adjust your day-to-day accounting practices if you think that's the right thing to do, or you would make adjustments to the contract that match the accounting practices that you're using and that you're comfortable with, because the last thing you want to do is give the other side an opportunity to argue that you're technically in breach of the contract because you're not doing the things you're supposed to be doing under the contract with respect to accounting. There's no reason to create that liability for yourself. And then finally, good accounting practices, and this is again my shameless segue to the next topic, good accounting practices will set you up for success in getting paid and in any future payment disputes. So the next topic is liens and notices. I think it goes without saying that there's always the carrot and the stick when you're working with people. And the carrot in terms of getting paid in the construction industry is you're doing good work for them, you're doing it in a timely fashion. That's the carrot. They should pay you for the carrot. Sometimes that doesn't work, or that's not enough, and so you need a stick sometimes. And in the construction context, that leverage is created by threatening or actually filing liens. In Minnesota, there's pre-lien notice required to have a lien under the statute, and the mechanics lien statute is mechanical in more than one way. You have to comply with the specific mechanics of the statute. You have to dot all your I's and cross all your T's to retain your lien rights, and if you don't, you lose your lien rights. And so it starts with pre-lien notice. In Minnesota, for general contractors, you give pre-lien notice in your prime contract. It's statutory language, a statutory form. You can get that from your counsel if you don't already have it. And then for subs and material suppliers, you provide it within 45 days of first furnishing labor or materials. And again, that's a statutory form. And then at the tail end of the process, if you actually need to rely on the leverage of the lien, you have filing and foreclosure timing requirements. You have to file the lien within 120 days of last doing work or providing materials. And Minnesota courts, like many jurisdictions, follow what's called the screen door doctrine, meaning that you cannot resurrect your lien rights after 120 days by going back and tinkering with the screen door. You can't at day 121 say, oh shoot, I really wish I had my lien rights. So, but it's more than 120 days since I did work, so I'm going to go back and play with the hinges or the doorknob. No, that doesn't work. So you really need to pay attention to when your team was done with their core work, done providing supplies or materials, and then count 120 days. And then you have to foreclose on the lien. You have to file the foreclosure lawsuit within 1 year of last providing work or materials. Progress payments and lien waivers. So this is picking up on good accounting practices again. First, what does the contract say about progress payments and payment requests? Follow the contract to a T in this regard. So if you're supposed to be submitting monthly or quarterly, make sure you're complying with the timing requirements in the contract. And then in addition, the contract should set forth what kind of supporting materials are required. You need to provide some kind of accounting document. You need to provide supporting documentation in terms of invoices or receipts for materials. Maybe it's above a certain dollar amount you need to do that. So make sure that, again, the contract is something that you can live up to and achieve at the beginning when you're negotiating the language. Make sure it matches what you actually do and can do, and then make sure you do it. Another critical issue when you're doing progress payments on a project is that you're giving good lien waiver forms, and they need to be good in two ways. They need to be legally sufficient, so make sure you're working with your counsel if you don't already have appropriate lien waiver forms, to make sure you have forms that are going to be effective under the law of the jurisdiction where you're operating. But then in the second sense is make sure you understand how to use them. Make sure you understand when to deploy them, when there's something you ought to be giving to the person paying you, and make sure you're giving the correct form. You would not believe the number of times that I see folks giving away all of their lien rights by giving a final lien waiver when what they actually intend to do is give a partial lien waiver because they're getting a partial payment as opposed to the final complete payment. And so make sure that you and your team have good forms and that everyone on your team understands how and when to use them, and that they understand the critical difference between a partial or final lien waiver, and that they understand the difference between a conditional and unconditional lien waiver. I think this is a particular area where it makes sense to have a short amount of training given to folks in your organization who are responsible for using those kinds of forms, because it can be absolutely critical in terms of whether you're going to have lien rights later down the road. Next topic. Good customer service, I believe, is one of the core basics for getting paid. What do I mean by that? Well, if you do perfect work and you do perfect work on time, you are very likely or more likely to get paid. But that's not what I mean when I talk about good customer service, because we live in the real world and we understand that despite that being a great aspiration and despite people trying to do their best, the work is not always going to be perfect and it's not always going to be done on time. Where good customer service comes in is it prevents every little work product issue and every little timing issue from automatically teeing up an emotional refusal to pay on the part of a project owner. If you have a good relationship with people, you have good communication skills, you're timely responding to concerns, and your team is engaging in good customer service skills, it's my experience from my perspective that you're less likely to have payment disputes arise based on small issues. That doesn't mean that if a big issue comes up with a good relationship that you're not going to have a dispute, but I believe that you're more likely to get paid on average over the long run if you and your team engage in good customer service practices and you develop strong enduring relationships with your owners and your customers and your clients. That all being said, you can have great customer service, you can do great work, you can do all of the things that you think you're supposed to do to get paid, and it still might not always work out. So at some point, you have to know when to call counsel. And I have two pieces of advice on this. First, have a process set up internally to calendar your lien deadline. So as I mentioned, in Minnesota, it's 120 days. So I would suggest that your internal business team should be calendaring the last day of work, calendaring the 120th day, and then I would suggest calendar the 90th day. So you leave yourself 30 days to contact counsel if the account hasn't been settled by the 90th day. You don't want to be calling your lawyer, God forbid, after the 120th day. You don't even really want to be calling your lawyer on the 118th or 119th day and leaving no one the amount of time you need to, get the job done right with the lien work. So have a process set up internally that will trigger a reminder for everyone that, hey, this hasn't been settled. We can maybe spend a couple more days trying to get it settled, but if we can't, then we're going to get to the lawyer sooner than later to get the lien filed. The second thing is, when you come to the lawyer, it's always better. And by better I mean it's easier, faster, which means ultimately cheaper for you in terms of legal fees and costs if you come with a good file. So the contract, any change orders, any material correspondence about payment issues that you've had if you're a sub with the GC, or if you're the GC with the owner, all of your accounting summaries, all of your accounting sheets, supporting documentation, invoices, etc., so that we can dig in right away, put the whole puzzle together with you, and figure out what's at issue. Because as you may know, one of the bases for attacking the validity of a lien is if the amount we state that's due and owing in the lien is incorrect. So if we overstate the amount in the lien that's due and owing by a material amount, or by a material amount, the lien will be invalid, and that's not an outcome that anyone wants. And so my two pieces of advice are: call us with ample time within that lien period, that 120-day lien period, and come to us with the materials in your project file that we're likely to need to help you. So to put a bow on it, the basics for getting paid in my mind are: have a good contract with an appropriate basis for payment that matches your current economic realities. Make sure that you understand what accounting and payment requirements there are in the contract, and they match what you actually intend to do as an internal business team. Make sure that you're complying with any lien notice requirements so that you have a lien later if you need it, and make sure you're complying with all of those progress payment and lien waiver requirements in the contract, and that you're actually giving an appropriate lien waiver when you send one out, that you and your team are using the appropriate kind of waiver. That's all I have for you today. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to reach out to me. This is my contact information. Again, my name's Kyle Ubel. I'm at Frederickson and Byron in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and my telephone and email address are listed there if I can be of any help to you. Thank you for your time today.
Kyle, thank you so much. That was really incredible. We do have two questions. One of the issues that happen, and what you were speaking about, happens, of course, all the time. People don't have a contract that really discusses the terms of payment. So I really appreciate you thoroughly discussing that. One question that came in is from a general contractor. And when they're working on commercial or residential projects, looks like a subcontractor who is asking, if we're working on a residential project that's less than 5,000 square feet, are we required to send the lien claimant's notice? And if we don't send it, do we lose our lien rights?
Yeah, you want to send, good question. You always want to send pre-lien notice because you never know. You might start a project believing it's going to be a $500 or $1,000 project, but then you get on site and you realize, and I've seen this happen before, a client does not send pre-lien notice because they think it's going to be a small job. And lo and behold, they show up and it's either more than they thought, or they get there and the initial thing goes well, and then the owner's like, oh, well, could you do this, this, and this too? And oh, yeah, sure. And everyone forgets, oh my gosh, well now it's a $50,000 project. I didn't file a pre-lien notice, serve a pre-lien notice, and now I have no lien rights. And so I think the best course of action is whenever you take on a job that you think is at all likely to be, of a material financial amount to you and your organization, go ahead and comply with the pre-lien notice requirements.
Very good. So yeah, we see that all the time where customers, they're like, nope, we don't need to do this. And before you know it, there are change orders and that project went up pretty quickly. So this customer looks like they're a general contractor, and there's a different notice that general contractors have to give. So perhaps you'd like to go into that for just a moment.
Yeah, so the pre-lien notice for GCs, again, it's statutory language. I'm sorry, I don't have, actually, if I got the internet here, I may even be able to find it. The statutory site for general contractors in Minnesota.
We'll actually add this to our webinar. So we'll give them that statutory general contractors notice. We'll add that for you.
Perfect. It's 514-011, Minnesota Statute 514-011. And that is, it's simply a block of text that you should have in all of your general contracts that you sign with a project order. And there's actually, it's right down to the font format. So I suspect that you have that in your contract already if it's been reviewed by a lawyer at any period in time over the last many years. But if it's not there, not to worry, get to a lawyer and we can help you get that language in there, and that should simply be appearing in all of your contracts.
Wonderful. Well, it looks like we don't have any other questions. I think on our next slide here, you have our contact information again. So if you do have any other questions or you do not have a perfect contract made, then I highly recommend that you reach out to the fabulous Kyle. So I want to thank you again for a wonderful webinar, and I wish everyone a sunny day.
Thank you, Ariella. You too.
Thank you.